Good? All right. Good too. All right. With that, we will call together the regular Borough Assembly meeting for July 5th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jay,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Mark,
Mark is excused.
David,
Here.
Tom,
Here.
Chelsea, Jeff,
Here. 6 of us live here in chambers with Mayor Jensen out fishing and excused. Now it is time to please rise for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Before we proceed to the approval of minutes, it is now time to swear in Sergeant Aris. Officer Drew Aris will be sworn in as Police Sergeant for the Petersburg Police Department.
Congratulate Officer Aris and let everyone know that he's been promoted to Sergeant Aris. And after a competitive process, he stood out as the #1 candidate. He's dedicated.
Andrew Aris solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Alaska and the ordinances of the Petersburg Borough, and that you will honestly, faithfully, and impartially discharge your duties as Police Sergeant for the Petersburg Police Department to the best of your ability.
I swear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Sergeant Aris. Very welcome. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, the approval of minutes. We have the June 2022 minutes to approve. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So move. Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The approval of minutes passes unanimously. Item number 5 is an amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. Are there any amendments today, or if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as is.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Tremblay to approve the meeting agenda as is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda has been approved. There are no public hearings or bid awards today. Brings us to item number 8, persons to be heard related to today's agenda. Anybody here care to speak on items related to today's agenda? Please step forward, state your name and who you represent, and you'll be given 5 minutes of testimony. The mic is yours. Of course.
My name is Brenda Louise, and I actually am speaking on my own behalf. I'm not representing anybody at this particular moment. What I would like to address is the ordinance, the 3rd reading of the ordinances that are on here, and my concerns. The newspaper of July 20th or June 23rd gives a summary of what's going to be taking place having the 3rd reading, but it doesn't specify the properties that were stated. I was hoping I could find out which property you're actually referring to. And I also would like to know, wrote it down. I would like to know that if there are any lands on the published map of the landless natives of Petersburg targeted for auction or purchase by any assembly member, including the mayor or his family or their family members. I just want to know if it's on record, have it on record, whether or not that statement is true or false, and what pieces of property are referred to in the first ordinance in regards to wanting utilities and what's for sale. My second concern is the last two ordinances. To me, when I look at this and read what the summary of the ordinance is in the newspaper, it looks like you as decision makers are creating an ordinance that is a proponent for personal gain. You would not be making decisions for community members' best interests, but you could be making decisions that would be allowing personal gains for yourself. And that's what I would like to have as my statement on record. Thank you.
Thank you. And although this portion of the meeting is into place to address that, when we get to the ordinances, I will touch on some of your concerns and perhaps some of the other assembly members will, in case you want to stay to listen to that part. Of course. Anyone else here today care to speak to visitors' views related to today's agenda? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak to views unrelated to today's agenda? Quiet day in the assembly, it appears. There's no board, commission, and committee reports. There's nothing on the consent agenda. Brings us to Petersburg Medical Center CEO Phil Hofstadter will provide us a report. Floor is yours, Phil.
Good afternoon, Phil Hofstadter, Petersburg Medical Center CEO. Just a couple of things. Work session was on June 14th, and thank you very much for being present. And looks like we're moving forward with geotech environmental study and those sites that we discussed there. So that's great. Get some preliminary work on that. Our funding application for the appropriations, $8 million, that Senator Murkowski put forward has been submitted, and we await approval. Or we obviously have to go through an application. It's a non-competitive bid application process. So that should come through soon, probably in the next month or so. We also, with the governor's signature, we were able to get the $20 million in the state capital budget item. That funding is tied to the Department of Treasury funding called Section 604. And we have an application process also with that. And so we had our first meeting last week to start putting that packet and that information together, which we intend on submitting in September. And so we'll have more information at that point. So that's really positive. Last week we met for a monthly board meeting and passed the budget for fiscal year 23. It was a tough budget for sure. We saw certainly a lot of challenges with staffing, and those increases with cost and staffing definitely being impacted with healthcare. We're not immune to that at all, and lots of increase in supplies in some of those areas. So we were able to put a budget together and move forward, but there were some assumptions that we got to stay on task with. So lastly, our annual fundraiser for the foundation is on August 6th. It was traditionally our paddle battle. We actually added a pedal battle to it. So biking portion from Scow Bay to Sandy Beach. It's there's some prizes to win, including a nice fat tire bike, to Alaska Airlines round trip tickets, and there's something else, but it's escaping me. Any case, good prizes. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Questions for Phil today? Member Kinzer.
Yes, Phil, when do you expect the geotechnical work to be completed by, or rough idea?
Yeah, we probably in the next month or so. And I know we just submitted the agreements a few weeks ago. We were able to get some of that in place. So I don't think it'll take too long to get that process, but within the next month.
Good. Of course. When do you anticipate that will actually, I assume you're going to want us to have some input in the site selection?
Yes, yeah,
And
once,
so we're looking sometime by the end of the summer or later?
I'm hoping the end of the summer, but I really don't know until they come in and do the test digs and make sure that those two locations are actually able to do anything with. And then from there, that process of going to in front of the assembly for planning and zoning is sort of that next step. So if there's an intermediate step to make a decision, we can certainly do that.
Any further questions? Thank you as always, Phil. Appreciate your efforts.
All right.
That brings us to today's mayor report. I'd like to express appreciation for Robert Zimke, our power generation mechanic and operator. Thank you to Robert Zimke, who's retiring after 25 years with Petersburg Power and Light. Thank you for your part in keeping the lights on in Petersburg, and enjoy your retirement. Other congratulations to Sergeant Andrew Ayres and Officer Rob Wachter. Congrats on the promotion of Sergeant Andrew Ayres and Officer Robert Wachter for graduating from the Police Academy in June. Last but not least, seeking letters of interest. The Petersburg Borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community by filling one of the vacant seats on the following borough boards and commissions until the October 2022 municipal election. Planning and Zoning Commission has 2 vacant seats. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board has 1 vacant seat. Letters of interest should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the borough offices located at 12 South Nordic Drive by sending to P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, AK 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And with that, I will kick it over to the borough manager for the manager's report.
Thank you, Assemblymember Stanton Greger. We have Chase and Crystal Kirby here in town, who are potential applicants for our open police department position. Chase is a certified police officer and would be a big addition to the force if, in fact, he chooses to. We include an offer and he accepts it. So, but they've been here over the 4th of July weekend, kind of checking out Petersburg. So if you see them wandering around, tell them hello. One of Sandy's last actions before she retired on us all was she submitted another request for at-home COVID test kits from the state. We're unsure if we'll get this order filed or if we'll be able to get any more. So if you need test kits, you might make sure you've got plenty for your family while they still last. The windows in our apparatus bay at Station 1 have been replaced with tempered glass to meet code. And we did have a problem with our regularly scheduled generator test at Station 1. There was a communication issue between the generator and the electrical panel. Our electrical supply failed to switch back to utility power after the test. Mattingly Electric is looking into the remedy. In the meantime, for those testing, we have to manually throw some switches to start the generator, which is we're keeping an eye on. Petersburg Triathlon Club is moving forward with Parks and Recreation with both on-site and off-site training sessions. Contact Scott Burt at Parks and Rec for more information. We're able to mostly complete the painting of the leisure pool, and we'll be, after it cures, we'll be adding some water to it, see if it fixed our leak problem there. And if it does, we'll then fill everything back up. We should know more in 5 to 7 days after the curing process. We will be doing another lifeguard certification course happening in July. Please contact Parks and Rec for more information if you're interested. Adult volleyball, pickleball, basketball, and open gym. A lot of the gym schedule that's going on this summer. See both the Aquatic Center and gym schedules on the Park and Rec website and the Facebook page. Been very, very busy in the harbor. Transient numbers are up with a full schedule of July and August stops. Waiting list or permanent moorage continues to grow. So it's a good year in the harbor. Tour ship activity is steady and regular with the larger vessels using the drive down 3 to 4 times a week and lightering into the South Harbor loading zone. Big thank you to our local fleet who are playing very nice. And the practice of reserving space on the inside has been very common. The staff appreciates the communication between the skippers, staff, and other users. Harbor parking is being enforced along Harbor Way and harbor parking lots and take notice of the no wake zone outside of all 3 harbors and the responsibilities for the owner operator. Water, wastewater, power and light, and public works have been responding to quite a few incidents where contractors have been hitting utilities or working without a completed dig permit. Just a reminder, any and all underground work must conform to the dig permit process and cannot be started until all known utilities are marked. Additionally, if any warning tape is uncovered during an excavation, the contractor must resort to hand digging to uncover the utility prior to going back to machine excavation. If an unknown conduit or pipe is discovered, work must stop to contact the borough and identify the infrastructure. Failure to obtain a dig permit is extremely unsafe and may lead to injury or death of the workers and substantial cost to the contractor for damage to municipal or other private utilities. You can apply for a dig permit on the borough's website or call Public Works for more information. We're seeing, as you can imagine, a lot of increased water deliveries for folks out off the water system. It's keeping our guys pretty busy right now. And the wood waste drop-off site at 14th Street is closed until further notice. Citizens and contractors will need to find alternate disposal sites for branches and brush. The landfill does accept these for a fee. The annual diesel run was ended 2 days earlier due to favorable weather conditions that helped the various contractors complete their work. Thanks to SEPA for getting their work done as soon as possible and reducing diesel fuel costs for its member communities. Power and Light hosted the engineers from McMillan, Jacob, and Gilks Hydro on June 14th and 15th. Trip was beneficial to confirm various dimensions of the powerhouse and ensure that the full scope of equipment delivery is understood by Gilks. This work was part of equipment procurement contract for the Blind Slough Hydro refurbishment project. We also hosted our FERC inspector on June 21st and 22nd for an annual inspection of the dam and powerhouse. The inspection went very well. We have 2 openings in Power and Light. One, we are seeking a groundman operator to round out the line crew, and we are seeking applicants to fill a soon-to-be vacant meter reader operator position. Interested applicants may apply through the borough's HR department. Just kind of the last opportunity to say congratulations to Sandy. We thank her for all of her dedication to the borough and for the many trainings that she offered to keep us all safe and ready to handle any first aid and CPR incidents while on the job. We hope she enjoys her time after work, and she's definitely earned some stress-free time with her family. Best wishes. Dry weather conditions are continuing and streets were very dusty. We still are unable to obtain a supply of our regular dust control material, which is lignicite. But we'll be ordering some as soon as it becomes available. A PSA is being issued to ask motorists to keep speeds to a minimum on dirt streets, which will help reduce the amount of dust generated by vehicle traffic. Reed Brothers is on site and working expeditiously to complete the new Public Works culvert install while the weather is favorable. As of last Friday, I think they had 2 of 3 of the culvert sections in place. Those of you may not have heard, we had a portion of the Public Works yard that was being used to store excavated materials unexpectedly let go, caused a small landslide into the Hammer Slough Creek Basin. We've reported the incident to permitting authorities and have mobilized the Public Works crew to begin clearing out the debris as quickly as possible. ADEC, the Corps of Engineers, and Fish and Wildlife have all been notified. Motor Pool received bids on 3 of the 7 surplus units being auctioned. So far, 2 have been paid for and picked up. The remaining surplus vehicles will be sold over the counter, and for details, contact Public Works at 772-4430. Our scrap metal contractor removed approximately 1,300 tons of scrap from the landfill. We are now working on a plan to clean up the metals area and do some seeding and slope stabilization. And the State of Alaska's Special Business Loan Program, funded with COVID relief dollars, expires at the end of July. There are still some funds available to lend in this program at a low interest rate of 2.44%. The loan would need to be closed by the end of July and funds dispersed in September. For more information, you can contact Liz Cabrera at 518-0242. And that's it. Unless there's questions.
Question to the manager. Member Lynn.
Yep. The slide at Public Works, is that going to affect the replacement of the culvert or anything? Are we going to have to adjust the contract in any way?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. So they're working independently. So the contractor working on putting the culvert in place and our guys working on clearing the slide. in two different parts of the same lot.
Thank you. Member Mucci.
Mayor, question for Steve. How are we doing with dispatchers? Where,
Three, and am I got that right? Three on board now and a couple more applicants in the pipeline. We're budgeted for 5 plus the 2 leadership positions. And if we can get the 5 in place, we'll be happy. So.
Thank you, Steve. I'll bring us down to unfinished business. Item A, ordinance 2022-08, an ordinance proposing an amendment to section 14.02A, services to be provided only by service area of the Home Rule Charter of the Petersburg Borough and directing that the proposed charter amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. Third reading. If adopted, 2022-08 will submit the proposed charter amendment to the qualified voters of the Petersburg Borough to amend the charter to add language regarding collection of solid wastes where the owner of the property requests and pays for such service, and water and sewer and electrical services where extension of such utility service is being requested and paid for by the owner of the property. Ordinance 2022-08 was unanimously approved in its first and second readings. I'd entertain a motion to approve this in its third and final reading.
so move.
Second.
Motion been made by member Mucci and seconded by member Tremblay. Discussion. Member Tremblay.
Just to be clear on, on what this is a question for the manager. This is a practice that, if I'm understanding it correctly, that we've already been providing where if somebody lives outside of service area 1, but they would like these services and they request them, this is establishing in code how that gets done basically and how it gets paid for. Am I correct in that?
Correct. Through the mayor. It allows us to provide services outside of service area 1 for those utilities, whereas the charter originally had said we couldn't. So it's a process we've always done, and we caught in review of the charter or the ordinances and wanted to make that clear for the future.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Yep, and as always, Becky or Steve, cut me off if I'm missing. I know the speaker today had mentioned that, wondering which properties it impacted. This is not about any specific properties. This is just the generalized, as member Tremblay, you just said, what we're already doing.
None of these ordinances have anything specific with a specific piece of property. They are setting up the rules for the future.
There we go. Just want to make sure I address that one that the speaker had mentioned. Further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes unanimously in its third and final reading, bringing us to ordinance B. Ordinance 2022-09, an ordinance proposing an amendment to section 19.03A, personal financial interest and nepotism, the Home Rule Charter of the Petersburg Borough, and directing that the proposed charter amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. Third reading. If adopted, ordinance 2022-09 will submit a proposed charter amendment to the qualified voters of the Petersburg Borough to amend the charter language from assembly to body to allow the elected body to which the officer belongs to determine if the officer may or may not participate in the official action. Ordinance 2022-09 was unanimously approved in its first and second readings. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been moved by member Amici and seconded by member Tremblay. I'll open on this one. For those listening at home or in the audience, all this does is, as it's written right now, if let's say a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission potentially had a financial conflict of interest, the way it is written, and the assembly would have to decide as opposed to Planning and Zoning itself or the hospital board, et cetera. And all this does is makes it official that each board will decide if they have any financial interest. Am I reasonably summarizing that?
Very good, sir. That
There we
is
go.
correct.
Just want to clarify for those listening. Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I'm grateful that they found that this was an identified issue to be resolved, because the way I see it is it streamlines the process for more accountability within each board. Like, for example, the example you gave of the Planning and Zoning, or say the Harbor Board, where they don't meet as consistently, an issue comes up in front of them that they need to address then and there. As it stands, they would have to delay conversation on that topic until the assembly got to weigh in with our up or down on a member's participation in the conversation. But giving the power back to that body so that they can discuss it amongst themselves and make sure everything's above board, to my mind, keeps somebody in the status quo. People might not talk about a potential conflict of interest because they don't want to deal with coming to the assembly. But if it's more streamlined and you can talk about it within that public meeting as it is in front of them, yeah, to me, it just makes sense. So I'll be voting yes on this.
Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Chelsea. Yes. Bob,
Yes,
David,
Yes.
Passes unanimously in its third and final reading and will be going to the voters. Ordinance C 2022-10, an ordinance proposing an amendment to section 11.13E, purchasing and contracting of the Home Rule Charter of the Petersburg Borough to allow borough employees and officials to participate in borough property sales when conducted by competitive outcry auction. Directing that the proposed charter amendment be submitted to the qualified voters of the borough. Third reading. If adopted, ordinance 2022-10 will submit a proposed charter amendment to the qualified voters of the Petersburg Borough to amend the charter to allow the borough employees and officials to participate in borough property sales when conducted by a competitive outcry auction. This was unanimously approved in its first and second readings. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been moved by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Tremblay. And for those listening at home or in the audience, it's this is oddly written as it stands right now. And as always, Borough Manager, the clerk cut me off. Borough assembly people or employees could participate in an auction, but only by sealed bid and not by outcry auction. Right now, we are allowed to do so. And so this would, let me back up. It came to light, some folks who'd want to participate in an outcry auction could not, when we didn't pass on, one by sealed bid. So this levels the playing field more or less. Reasonable summary?
Yes, and again, it's not about specific properties.
Not at all.
It basically is how the process that the borough will follow to sell properties and who's eligible for bidding on them. In this case, on an outcry auction, the assembly would, and members of the staff would be allowed to bid in public, in front of everyone, just like anybody else can.
There we go. Further discussion by the assembly, Member Tremblay.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to a particular comment regarding the landless bill in terms of the borough land. Those are only, if I'm correct, those are, if there are any borough lands in the landless bill are still at the moment borough lands and so would be included in this kind of definition. Am I right?
Well,
Is there any borough land in the landless bill that would be, yeah, that kind of.
so the answer is no.
Okay.
The landless bill pulls land from federal property. The borough pulls property from state-owned property. So two different pots of land. The borough is not allowed to choose any federal property related to municipal entitlements. We couldn't choose it, nor can we sell it because we can't buy it. Again, the land that the borough is choosing comes from state properties and is not part of the federal landless discussion.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Good clarifier, Member Tremblay. Member Mucci.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. On the wording of the actual proposition that's going to be voted on, it talks about the third or fourth row down there, it says conducted by competitive sealed bid. Does that include the outcry auction as well?
Are we asking Member Mucci?
Whoever can answer the question.
Say that again. I'm
Well,
sorry.
under the wording of the proposition that will be on the fall ballot, it talks about the bidding process, and it talks about, it just specifically says by competitive sealed bid. Does that include an outcry auction as well? because that's what we're talking about, is changing the charter to include outcry auction.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure the meaning of exact. I know that prior to this discussion, assembly members and staff could actually bid using, if it was a sealed bid.
Okay.
This changes it to allow sealed bid or outcry auction. The specifics of your question, I'm not. It does say or an outcry auction is conducted, if we're talking about section E there.
Okay.
So it's basically saying, used to only be able to do sealed bid, now you can do sealed bid or outcry auction
Okay.
based on how the, yeah, and that is a decision the assembly makes as far as the
I
type
see.
of auction. So
And then, Mr. Mayor, it also mentions on the last line there to be amended to additionally include sales by outcry auction. So we're covered. Thank you.
Member Lynn?
I had the same concern that was expressed earlier, whether or not any assembly members or for that matter, primary staff should be able to bid on any plans put up by the borough. I had that question earlier. The clerk pointed out to me a couple of things. One is the fact that we can already do it by sealed bid, but we can't do it by, they can't do it by outcry. And as the vice mayor pointed out, is that was showed up here very recently on a piece of land, or a couple pieces of land that was bid on. The question I was wrestling in my mind is, should we be allowed to bid at all on any lands? And in my discussions with the borough clerk, I came convinced that it should be open because there's no special process. The argument is that if the assembly chooses to put a piece of borough land up for sale, anybody can bid on it. There's no special provisions for anybody. And so that flipped me over to say, no, let's proceed with making the change that was requested.
Thank you, Member Lynn. Member Tremblay?
Thank you. Yeah, I actually am supportive of this in part because changing it to include outcry, that's actually a much more visible form of participation than a sealed bid. Sealed bid is, there's a bunch of closed envelopes and then they all get opened and one of them ends up being the winner. So bringing it out in public for everybody to see is actually more visibility, not less. And that is generally a good thing. So I'll be voting yes.
Further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Tom,
Yes.
Chelsea, Bob,
Yes,
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes unanimously in its third and final reading. All three of those ordinances will be on the ballot. New business. Appointment of an assembly member to facilitate assembly meetings of July 18th, August 1st, and August 15th. Mayor Jensen will be unavailable and Vice Mayor Santon-Gregor will be attending remotely if able per Robert's Rules of Order. When the mayor and vice mayor are not able to facilitate assembly meetings, the assembly shall appoint a member to do so by motion and roll call vote. Although I will be available to chair those meetings, I feel it is an inferior way to have 5 or 6 of you guys here live and me chairing from afar. So I wanted to punt that one. I think it'll make for more streamlined process and better democracy. If I were so inclined, I would entertain a motion to have Member Lynn chair these meetings while I'm gone. And if someone else has a different idea, I'm open to that too. I just know he's been chairing SEPA for a bit and I feel like he would do a good job, but it's at the will of the assembly.
I'll make that motion.
Motion been made by Member Tremblay to have Member Lynn chair the meetings of July 18th, August 1st, and 15th. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Cool. Again, I've floated that idea out there and figured like you guys hash it out. So discussion. Member Tremblay.
Another option is that we take turns and everybody gets more experience chairing meetings. Just throwing that out there too, but Bob would do an excellent, Member Lynn would do an excellent job. But if anybody else is interested, go for it. I'm chairing enough meetings right now, so I'm not signing myself up.
Yeah, and again, I could chair from afar, but I don't want to rely on Zoom to do that. I think he has a lot of better meetings with me just as a Zoom participant. Seeing no discussion, then I'll clerk call the roll, please.
Jay,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Chelsea. Yes. Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes unanimously, and thank you, Member Lynn, for doing that for those meetings. Much appreciated, sir. Down to communications. Correspondence received since June 16th, 2022 is available for perusal on the Borough website. Item 18, Assembly Member Comments. Member Tremblay.
Thank you. We've had our first meetings from the task force, early childhood education, and it's been going really well. We're having more meetings. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions on the particulars. I just wanted to let the public know that this is separate. A group of individuals have been meeting every couple months to talk about housing and the need for it. And it's kind of a brainstorming session where people share any developments they've seen in their conversations or work. And we're meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's a Zoom meeting. And so if you would like to join us for that meeting, let me know and I can get that invitation sent to you. My phone number is 907-518-0590, or you can just email me. Everyone's welcome. We try to keep it to an hour, so there isn't a lot of back and forth. It's more situational updates, and it's frustratingly slow, but that's kind of the nature of a topic like housing. And it's been nice to just keep the conversation moving forward. So I'm looking forward to it and open invitation. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Tremblay. Further comments from the Assembly, Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just a brief update on the Southeast Alaska Sea Otter Stakeholder Working Group that I sit in on. They just finished up on their survey on June 17th, that their sea otter survey that went from Yakutat to Cape Shakon, and they flew about 5,000 miles, and they're in the process now of going through all the data and their abundance, and they're hoping to have a report on March of 23, which should have a good indication of where sea otters are in Southeast Alaska. So just a brief update. Thank you.
Thanks for the update, Member Mucci. Further comments? Recognitions. Member Tremblay.
A lot of people put a lot of work into making the July 4th festivities happen. So anybody in any capacity that was involved, it was a lot, and a lot of people really appreciated it. So open, thank you.
Further recognitions on this fair day? In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.